From the garden to Gethsemane to genetics, the Punisher's plan is proven, and the serpent's seduction down through the ages is seamless. Rail against God by raping his creatures, or better yet, get them to screw tape each other. He made us in his image. The destroyer deformed us to its own. All are fallen, and there is only one just judge. But for the audacity of Abraham, hope follows faith. Seduction of evil begins with oppression. All are oppressed all of the time. Inward focus on oppression begets obsession. Obsession inwards on trauma leads to infection. Highlighting infection leads to infestation. Evil infestation leads to tricked or voluntary possession. But sanctification counters seduction. The opposite of oppression is mercy. The opposite of obsession is justice. The opposite of infection is purification. The opposite of infestation is sanctification. And the opposite of possession is freedom. And there is nothing free in this world except the grace of God. Rape born, orphan adopted, blessed bastard. Initiated, indigenous initiated, martial arts bastard. PSYOPs and special forces served. Decades of duty in DEA and DIA. Intelligence inducted, sabotaged and slandered. Corruption crucibled, deep state betrayed, Yeshua saved. Whistleblower warrior, rejecting revenge. Repurposed in redemption as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer. Following God, leading my family, and rallying all patriots to rescue our republic by restoring a virtuous populace. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Welcome, everybody. Lots going on today. Lots of breaking news. Going to jump right into that. So I've been putting out a lot on X that last night Iranian airspace was closed. Air war was imminent. But the airspace has been reopened. Trump apparently almost greenlit a strike on Iran late last night, but it is reopened. Sources say Trump halted it because advisors couldn't promise a decisive regime toppling blow and warned Iran could hit back hard and the U.S. might not have enough regional assets ready to cope. So Iran remains on the brink, not over it. And this is likely still going to happen. Almost right after that, the unusual event in Israel was a very short 1.5 seconds earthquake in the immediate vicinity of Dimona, where Israel develops a very explosive kind of candy. More unusual, an earthquake drill was scheduled a few days ago for the precise moment of the actual earthquake. So Israel is trying to tell the U.S. something, and that looks like it was an underground nuclear blast. So there, Ann Vandersteel has surmised that Trump may be being held hostage by Israeli nukes in the country. That's kind of a twist on my book Chase, where it's Arab terrorists bringing in the nukes. But that could have been a message in response immediately. But this is exclusive, is U.S. small arms for Iran are standing by. And we're going to talk about Trump just made the drug war precedent profitable, and breaking U.S. Special Forces, Green Berets, are back in Mexico. And small arms equals small arms instructors, by the way. Iran death threats Trump, so the CIA is celebrating that because that hooks up all their crook connections. And we'll have Susan Bradford's BlackRock Bamboozle on in a bit. Before we get to that, though, I haven't done any fan mail in a long time. And I just wanted to say, Mickey and Linda Passer, thank you so much for the sympathy card for my dad's birthday and his passing. That's so sweet of you to remember that. And I appreciate your note here, even though your handwriting is oftentimes difficult to read. And I will get these donations that you're giving me out to worthy organizations. But very thoughtful, Mickey and Linda. Mickey is my most prolific fan mail writer of all, and I much appreciate you and your wonderful wife. Also, I got fan mail. It's actually called fan mail from Buzzsprout. I guess, dear Mr. Prather, my name is Pamela Ward, and I just listened to your podcast on Candace Owens and Wounded Knee. Outstanding in every way. Brought back a memory. In 2000, my young family went to a Purple Heart powwow in White Cloud, Michigan. Not being native, I was humbled at the warmth which we were welcomed. That's good, because they don't seem to be very welcoming these days. I learned that the proportion of Purple Heart awards are greater for Native Americans. That's very true. I learned that Native regalia is sacred. That's right. It's not a costume. It's regalia. And I learned that calling school sports team mascots Indian is culturally demeaning. I don't think so. Indian means Ndio. Russell Means, the great Lakota leader, said that's what the term they use. I use that. All older guys do. Indian. It's not Indian. It's Indian when they say it. So I don't think that is disrespectful. I'm glad you talked about the Medal of Honor problems. You talked about John Chapman there. Genocide is always wrong. So thank you for being a man of principle. You'll carry that with your soul forever. So very thoughtful there as well. But anyway, U.S. military action was standing by. I predicted this, remember, on Tuesday, and then I was announcing it last night. But it looks like it has stood down because intelligence couldn't guarantee toppling the regime with this. But exclusive intelligence from personal sources indicates U.S. C-5As and C-17 cargo aircraft are standing by and loaded with small arms. That's very significant because with small arms comes small arms instructors. That means CIA and Special Forces, Green Berets. That means boots on the ground. I have a lot of experience in this because I work with the Contras. Now, it may be that they are pulled out of Iran and trained out, just like the Contras were pulled out into Honduras. That's where I initially ran into them, but they were also brought into Arkansas. They were brought into Fort Benning. But eventually, folks go on the ground. I know because I went into Nicaragua back then covertly. Later on, I went in overtly as a DE agent. But Earl Jackson says, just what we don't need, another war for Israel. Nope, totally agree with that. I'm just giving you the intelligence and being ruthlessly truthful. But U.S. diplomats and military personnel have been advised to leave major American air base Qatar, as European officials warn that U.S. military action targeting Iran may be imminent. And so it is still imminent. It just didn't happen last night. Well, why? Because they couldn't guarantee toppling the regime. So what's that mean? That's going to be a more gathering and massing of forces. Toppling Iran's regime is very different than toppling Venezuela. Persia is an ancient and massive country with a huge army and a long traditions. But Reuters reported that 2 European officials said U.S. military action targeting Iran may commence within the next 24 hours. Again, that's on hold now. The heightened alert following days of unrest inside Iran, where protests against the Islamic regime have continued to spread, and Mossad has just admitted that they are behind those. That's breaking as well. And they're saying that estimated 2,000 anti-regime protesters were killed. That's totally unreliable. These are numbers being generated by intelligence services. So they've gone from 200 to 2,000. Nobody really knows, but Iran has reached out to negotiate with Trump. And they have also said they have stopped the killing. They were going to do a public hanging. They hang people from cranes there, and they stopped that. So they are definitely trying to hold on. So that's very, very significant to understand. A lot going on. But the big exclusive that I am breaking is from personal sources and from my personal experience is U.S. small arms are standing by in C-5As and C-17s. Those are big, huge military cargo aircraft. Same thing that was used with the Contras back in my day. But with small arms comes small arms instructors. That's initially going to be CIA and maybe some special forces, Green Berets as well. and initially it'll be outside of country, but it could then go into country. But the big point there is it's boots on the ground or near on the ground. So that's very significant because I had said it won't be boots on the ground, so it already looks like boots on the ground because those aircraft are loaded with those small arms, and those small arms, of course, are for the Iran resistance to continue to overthrow the government. So that may be also part of the developing piece of it as well, is they have the Mossad assets within Iran, and there are, without a doubt, not doubtful that we've got a lot of American assets, but Mossad assets for sure because of the region, because of the language, because of the timings, and they have not organized or fomented enough resistance forces. That could be. But small arms means small arms instructors, and that means boots near or on the ground. So that's very, very significant. But it's also breaking that Trump has made the drug war precedent profitable. And again, this is my lane, very familiar with this. Asset forfeiture of cars, houses, guns, and cash, of course, has long been an integral part of drug law enforcement. I ought to know. I've literally done tons of it. But Trump has just internationalized it and applied it to nation states. And in doing so, he may just have found the only way to balance the budget. Back in the day, the DEA and the U.S. Marshals, through drug asset forfeiture seizure, were the only agencies to ever make a profit. And that went into a drug asset forfeiture fund. And guys were even developing cases so they could grab Hummers. So with asset forfeiture taking precedence over drug seizures, because Venezuela is not the leading drug country in South America. That, of course, is Colombia, followed by Bolivia, Peru. And again, I worked those countries in drug law enforcement with Operation Snowcap, and I was a special Snowcap operator. And of course, in Central America, it's Mexico, the Mexican cartels. But when Trump authorized the arrest of Nicolas Maduro on drug trafficking charges, that was an unprecedented change. Now, you could argue that Noriega in my day, where I just got pulled out right before the Panama invasion, was similar to that. But really, it is not, because the drug cartels had not been designated foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs, at that time. So this is really precedent changing, and this is an unprecedented action, seizing a foreign head of state and bringing him to face justice in American courts. That signals that the war on drugs has entered a new and decisive phase, and I'm in agreement with this. I've always said this needs to be done. This is something Trump is doing right. And with the emphasis on asset forfeiture, he may very well be able to balance the budget. It is possible with the immense amount of money seized by drugs. When they're money laundering, I've done a lot of counter money laundering, they're willing to lose massive amounts just to launder some money because there's so much money involved. So Trump has systematically begun to dismantle the drug cartel apparatus, designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations through Executive Order 14157, authorizing U.S. military strikes to destroy drug boats departing Venezuela before they reach American waters. And now, with Maduro's arrest, demonstrated that no one is beyond the reach of American justice. So this is the drug war. And again, it's one of the wars I said he needed to wage, and he's waging it, and he's doing a good job. In the last 7 years, more than 600,000 Americans have died from drug overdoses, exceeding U.S. combat deaths from World War II. Fentanyl poisoning is now the leading cause of death for Americans 18 to 50, claiming 140,000 lives in 2022 alone. The homeless crisis devastating our city is overwhelmingly a drug crisis. So that's true. You look at any of the drug channels, like if you look at the drug channel map from Nogales to Tucson, all the crime centers around drugs, all the kidnapping, all the robberies, all the rapes, it's all drug crime generated. And the cartels want to hold on to their transshipment points. So the criminal apparatus known as offshore banking is the modern money laundering. We're going to talk about that with my guest, Susan Bradford, hopefully. And the Mexican drug cartels, which is really where, if you wanted to just focus on drug law enforcement, that's where the start would be. But Trump is not doing that. And I want to be clear about that. He's focusing on asset forfeiture, which is the oil from Venezuela. He's not focusing on drug law enforcement first. So he is shoring up commerce for the failing American empire, fallen American republic, via American conquest, which he said openly about Venezuela. But Mexico and Colombia are certainly watching this closely, this precedent closely, because could this asset forfeiture nation state precedent apply to them? Most certainly. That is very true. But the Mexican drug cartels command over 100,000 armed men. That's equivalent to the Mexican army. The Chinese triads control massive synthetic drug production, fentanyl, through secretive shelf companies. But the real godfathers of the genocidal enterprise are the British financed oligarchy and their network of offshore banks. And again, we'll talk about that with Susan. Hopefully, the British Empire pioneered global drug trafficking in the 18th and 19th centuries to destroy China's sovereignty. That's true. The Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, exactly what that was about. Today, that same imperial system operates through the offshore financial centers, unregulated banking havens, holding $50 to $100 trillion in laundered wealth. So if Trump is able to access that through FinCEN, and I've worked FinCEN cases as well, that changes everything. That is, very, very significant. So major Wall Street and City of London banks, including JP Morgan, Chase, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Stratford, Chartered, and Bank of America, have been proven to knowingly launder drug money. And of course, they were in on all of the pedo money with Epstein, without a doubt. So this is not an accident. This is the system. Drugs degrade morality, spread despair, destroy families, and make self-government impossible. This is a foreign invasion, and this is poisoning our future, orchestrated by an Anglo financial oligarchy that views American sovereignty and industrial power as threats to the global control. Trump seems to understand this. His arrest of Maduro strikes the narco-terrorist networks. His executive orders targeting cartel finances, that's the key, really hit not just another drug seizure. That doesn't matter. They're willing to lose drug seizures. Although you lose cocaine, somebody dies for cocaine. Kiki Camarena died for marijuana. But the assets, the cartel financiers, are the big hitters. So military operations against cartels, naval blockades, border security, and most officially dismantling the offshore banking apparatus that makes the entire drug trade possible. Now, that'll be the key to see if that happens. And probably our guest will disagree that will happen. And I will ask her about that because that's a very complicated subject to understand. But Trump has just made the drug war precedent very profitable, so profitable, in fact, that he might even be able to balance the budget. Of course, that is through more conquest. That would go into Mexico, that would go into Colombia, all of that as well. You'd have to understand that. Let me take a quick look here at everybody. Bella Customs, do you think they'll file for contempt for the Clintons next week, like they say? So well, I don't know the case you're talking about. I don't think anything is going to happen while Bondi is in there. Drug asset forfeiture has been criticized for its corruptibility. Some small town cop shops, not small town, just small town cop shops, but large. And I'm very well aware of those things. That happens in the produce field because produce, you got to move fast on the border. And cattle, you got to move fast on the border. So it's a cash business. And they would just seize cash and and they'd say, hey, I'm a produce buyer, but they'd say, well, you got to prove that because it's civil asset forfeiture. It's not a beyond a reasonable doubt. It is preponderance of the evidence. There's been a lot of abuse of asset forfeiture, and you could argue what Trump is doing is asset forfeiture on a large scale. And he just met with all of the large oil companies that got kicked out of Venezuela when Venezuela nationalized the oil. And they were just talking about, we can't wait to get back in there. And so they're carving up Venezuelan oil But this is again a precedent change. This is an inflection point, and it could be very good for the U.S. economy. But I don't know the answer to the Clintons' contempt. I'm not following that, but again, I don't expect anything to happen because that goes so deeply. But also, Iran death threats Trump, and I think the CIA is celebrating that. I think the CIA and the deep state are celebrating a lot right now. I think they're very, very happy with what's happening in Iran. I think they're very happy with what happened in Venezuela. And I think they just popped the champagne after Iran broadcast a death threat against Trump, saying this time it will not miss the target. The Iranian regime has essentially fallen right for the PSYOP trap set up by the global cabal as in Kabbalists, CIA and Mossad being the primary Praetorian Guard planners in that. The global cabal are celebrating the Iran theocratic tyranny is not only failing, but has just officially fulfilled U.S.-Israeli deep state PSYOP scripts involving the deep state staged assassinations on Trump, perfectly justifying U.S. aggression and imperial conquest. Remember, they were trying to link the Butler attempt with Crook, who probably wasn't even the guy, with Iran. Big stretches back then. Well, Iran just helped them with that fake script. Iran has issued a threat against President Trump by broadcasting a sign with a picture of the president during the 2024 Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt with the words, "This time it will not miss the target." Now, who generated that sign in Iran? Well, probably Mossad generated that sign. Mossad has just admitted they are behind the protests. So could they be behind that as well? Yeah, I think they could be, because they are just walking into the PSYOP trap here, the rally around the flag, which happened after Trump was shot. And of course, the timing of this is not accidental at all. So, and the message appeared on Iranian state-run TV. So they are owning it. And this is a huge mistake because this really polarizes American Christian Zionists as well. You know, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, the war pigs, you know, are going to be all over this. Hey, they really were trying to kill the president. Look at all the naysayers that said it wasn't them. And of course, I'm saying it was the deep state. There's Praetorian Guard puppets running everything. The government was definitely in on it. But they are repeatedly threatening to strike the country and saying that they wouldn't miss this time. And this is a huge mistake. But the CIA plans, just like they worked out 26 years ago under Kermit Roosevelt, grandson of President Roosevelt, when he was, and before that, he was, hitting the beach on D-Day. This is just playing right into the global cabal's script, the global cabal being the international deep state Praetorian Guard actors. And another photo came out on a member of the Bazji Volunteer Islamic Militia outside the British Embassy. Note, in Tehran, holding up a poster with the same image of Trump and a message in English that said, "The arrow doesn't always miss." Okay, so it's the British Embassy. So the British want to get back there, get control of that oil. And of course, I was just saying they are running that, and our guest will talk about that as well, hopefully. And the message was in English. So they speak Farsi there, or French. Why is it in English? Because it is for American audiences, because it is to stir up domestic religious war there. So, and Iranian Speaker of Parliament Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf on Wednesday issued a warning that the U.S. military and Israel would be legitimate targets if America launched an attack on the Islamic Republic. Cries of death to America came from lawmakers. Well, that's nothing new. You know, they do that all the time. But supposedly there was a back channel. I thought I had that here. Let me see if I found that here. I guess I did not print that up. There was back channel communications, possibly via Putin and Russia, between Iran and Israel that Israel would not strike Iran. Now, how many times has Iran or Israel honored their stand down, their truces? Never. Okay, so this is just more Mossad subterfuge, win by deception, their unofficial motto, as opposed to through wisdom, which is in Proverbs, which is their official motto. But this is likely just to throw them off base, off guard. I see some comments there on X. Earl Jackson, trying to see your comment here. It's Professor Marandani from Tehran gave an interview with Napolitano talking about what happened in Iran. Okay, well, I don't bother watching Fox anymore, as it is totally useless. Let's see. They were supposed to testify about the Epstein files and didn't show up. Well, that's no surprise at all. If Trump ends up dead, we should kill all Israelis in the nation. Not advocating anything illegal, immoral, or violent, although the left does continue blatantly and openly. That's Drop Hammer saying that. Shouldn't be saying things like that. All that stuff can be used against you. Not advocating anything illegal, immoral, unethical, or violent, although the left and the government does continually. But on other matters, Trump has announced the end of federal funding to sanctuary states. And this is basically Trump is laying siege to 12 sanctuary cities. And this is challenging the cartel's holds on these cities. Why? Because these cities are wrecks. So Trump has announced plans to end federal funding to sanctuary cities and states beginning in February, citing jurisdictions to protect criminals and fuel fraud and crime. The move comes amid ongoing immigration crackdowns throughout the country. While speaking at the Detroit Economic Club on Tuesday, I think this is where Trump was talking to all of the had all the oil execs that were just salivating to get back into Venezuela. They were talking about how they had lived in Venezuela and raised their kids in Venezuela, and they couldn't wait to get back in Venezuela. Anyway, Trump accused states that contain sanctuary cities of fostering fraud, crime, and violence, saying they are protecting criminals. Yeah, they're protecting the cartels. They're being paid off. That's especially true, in Arizona, in Nogales, Tucson, and Phoenix. And he said, starting February 1st, we are not making any more payments to sanctuary cities or states having sanctuary cities because they do everything possible to protect criminals. And the U.S. Department of Justice specifies 12 states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Minnesota, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington, along with the District of Columbia as well. So this isn't civil war. It's the drug war, but it almost looks like civil war because it is targeting all the sanctuary cities, which are all the liberal cities, which are all the Democratic cities. And the cities are Albuquerque, New Mexico, Berkeley, California, Boston, Chicago, Denver, East Lansing, Hoboken, Jersey City, Los Angeles, New Orleans, New York, Newark, Patterson, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Portland, Oregon, Rochester, New York, Seattle, Washington, and San Francisco, California. Now, U.S. Judge Aruna Subramani, sounds Iranian, issued a temporary restraining order blocking the Trump administration's freeze of about $10 billion in funding for programs like child care subsidies, citing immediate harm to the 5 states involved and questioning the policy's legality. But the announcement was made amid escalating tensions between liberals and immigration enforcement officers, including clashes in Minneapolis and Portland. Trump did not specify which exact federal funds would be slashed, but transportation, housing, education, and public safety are all speculated to be impacted. So what has been allowed to happen in all of these states is you've got everybody on welfare, and so they don't have to work. They don't have to own anything. Because they don't own anything, they don't take responsibility. That's why the housing projects are wrecks, and the housing projects are full of drug dealers. But they're getting their money so they can go buy food. So what are they doing? Well, they're going then and selling dope and selling people and doing illegal gun trade, drug trade, people trade as well. Well, these cities are non-functional anymore. They don't produce anything. The cities need the country. The country doesn't need the cities. The cities don't grow any food. The cities don't have any water. The country has the food and water that has to be brought into these cities, and especially when they are non-functioning cities and they are a day away from falling apart. With Trump cutting off federal funds, he is essentially besieging them. He is essentially laying siege like a old king would to a castle until you just run out of supplies. And then, of course, he's going to bring in the National Guard and the Quick Reaction Force. I've said, I'm on record of saying that these Quick Reaction Forces are going to become standardized and they're going to stick around. And there'll be a lot more actual cartel violence happening in the cities, although it will be labeled law enforcement. Now, there was just a Venezuelan who had a shovel, who was brandishing it at ICE agents, and he was shot. And of course, there was the U-Haul going in. So they're still trying to use fifth generation warfare tactics where they don't want to bring in guns. Remember, Antifa didn't want to bring in guns, fireworks, concrete milkshakes, all that stuff. But they don't want to. The cartels are trying to not go into straight kinetic warfare where it's gun battles like the Untouchable days, because they will lose that fight against law enforcement and the military. Initially against law enforcement, they'll win it. Against the military, they will lose it for sure. And so they are not playing that card. That's very significant that they're still trying to play by fifth generation warfare rules and hold on to their turf, even though later on it will become even more bloody, more violent. America will start to look a lot more like Mexico, bodies hanging from bridges, heads lined up. All of that will be happening because they are not going to give up that turf. Let's see. Lots of questions, lots of comments here. Do you think Trump should start the Insurrection Act in Memphis? I don't think he'll use the Insurrection Act, but he could, yes, and he's surging forces there. Pamoff says, Hammer, the mayor of Maples Frey, is Jewish. He's defending Muslims who hate Jews. Well, that's good. Glad to hear federal funding will be halted for Oregon. Yes. Portland, Oregon has turned into an Antifa cesspool. Stand for honor. Pamoff, I'm in the Twin Cities area. Most of the trouble is in Minneapolis. Many residents feel sorry for the poor illegal immigrants. Could it be the people of Minneapolis are uninformed? Same thing happened. No, they have been siloed. They have been psyoped with cognitive dissonance for so long. That's the real purpose of the intelligence agencies, is they've been psyoped for so long that they don't believe the truth before their eyes. Pamoff on the flight, appeared 2 federal agents were on board. They're clean cut and healthy. Okay, well, glad to see that. That's not the FBI then. I'm in semi-rural Oregon, where we are close to farms and farmers. Could it be that Somalis gave Jacob Frey dollars in order to get his mayor job? Yeah, certainly could. The media makes it an emotional appeal. The politicians are pretending to be tough guys, but what cowards they are, certainly. Well, I'm glad we're having a robust conversation because that's what I want to get to today. And I have a special guest today, and I think it fits in perfectly with what's going on as we see, again, that Trump's second term is really about Israel. And he just did MEGA the other day for Iran. So make Iran great again. And of course, it's been make Israel great. So that America is like third tier. And of course, I've outed that Trump is our first Jewish president. Then Mark Levin came out and confirmed that. And I've talked about how he had to fight multiple wars, the cartel wars. He's doing a pretty good job. The tariff war against the unrestricted warfare doctrine of China, executed by the Thousand Talents program, was going pretty well, and seems to be going pretty well with his legacy to collapse the Chinese economy. As I talked about on Tuesday, a lot of people found Tuesday's show explosive, but he hasn't fought the deep state at all. It seems he has been captured by that. I'm still getting comments on X and everything like, what's your proof of Trump being captured by the deep state? His actions, I've got other people answering for me. His actions are the proof. It's real clear. It's real obvious. Anyway, all of that ties in with the American Republic has fallen and the empire is failing, just like Rome. Rome Republic fell, Rome Empire failing. You prop up a failing, you shore up a failing empire, either by commerce, which Trump seems to have done all he can with commerce, or by conquest. With Venezuela, it became open conquest. And that precedent now established, I just talked about, which has never been done before. Certainly not when I was a DEA agent, because there were no foreign terrorist organizations. The drug cartels were not designated as foreign terrorist organizations, has changed everything. So it's all about asset forfeiture, international asset forfeiture on a nation state level, and that could actually balance the budget. And Mexico and Colombia got to be looking at this. They got to be worried about this. And this is also what Iran is about too, about those oil. So it becomes about asset forfeiture, which becomes about money. Of course, asset forfeiture has long been misused, as one of the listeners already pointed out. And I saw this misused. I saw guys making cases so they could seize, Hummers back in the day. But that's what's happening. And so that goes back to power, which goes back to money, which goes back to my guest. One more. So could Mossad agents be in Iran and fostering the protest? I heard possibly. Yes, Mossad has come out and said they are fostering those protests. That's why all of a sudden they're happening. The Persians have been chafing under theocratic tyranny for decades, but nothing's been happening. But all of a sudden something's happening. It's because Mossad is activating their assets in the area. Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. But anyway, we're going to get to my guest about that because she's an expert in this, very intelligent lady. Susan Bradford is an investigative journalist, historian, researcher, and author who has written over a dozen books. Bradford holds a BA in English from UC Irvine and an MA in International Relations, just like me, from University of Essex. She began her journalism career interning for CBS TV News in Los Angeles. As a postgraduate, she was the funding editor of the European Review for the Center for European Studies at Essex, senior research fellow for the Atlantic Council of the UK. And she worked as the producer for Fox News Channel, assignments editor for the Voice of America. So she's got some intelligence experience there, speechwriter for Korean Ambassador Sung Chul Yang, and lead investigative journalist for the Abramoff investigation. Bradford has written and ghostwritten many books. Her series on the deep state includes Lynched, Royal Blood Ties, Tartar Treachery, United Church of Heist, Jack Abramoff, Rothschild Zionist, Taking Back America, End of Globalism, Shadow Dragon, Unmasked, The Coronavirus Story, Saudi Swindle, The Tribes That Rockefeller Built, and many more. Susan, welcome to the Prather Point. I'm so happy and excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I definitely came into the right monologue. I was very interested in hearing what you had to say. It fits in right, with what we were planning to talk about. So thank you so much.
Yes. So I have, thank you for sending me your material. I have reviewed it. But usually I can get a handle when I have an author on, and I am an author. I can get a handle on their material. I can kind of sum it up, and I just kept looking at your stuff on BlackRock Bamboozle, and I really cannot sum it up very well. It just you're everywhere. You've got so much in there. You even got Sabbateism, Frankism in there, which I really love that you found that, and not Khazarianism. But you just cover so much material there. So I'm going to have to let you kind of frame this in the hidden history of the global banksters, and then bring that up to date as to how that is impacting exactly what we're seeing now. So please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. There is a lot of material to cover. My interest in this began with the Abramoff investigation, where I was really finding that our government had been hijacked. There are special interests that have weaponized the Department of Justice, the committee, the federal government, the agencies. And I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I've been, researching this subject for over a decade now. And what I've actually uncovered is that the problem that we're dealing with is one of government illegitimacy. And there's been like an international crime syndicate, if you will, that has been kind of coalescing since the Protestant Reformation. And I've been able to kind of trace back the origins of that cabal, if you will. I followed it through the takeover of the governments around the world. And BlackRock, of course, is its current vehicle. But I'd be more than happy to kind of go through the process of how this network kind of hijacked governments and enable. Essentially what it's done, it has put the power of the government into the hands of the corporations and not to the people whom they should be representing and serving.
Yeah, let's start there, and then start with the Protestant Reformation, their connection.
Okay, so what your audience may or may not know is that governments in Europe were originally established through Jesus. You have the Vatican established through St. Peter, and then the monarchs held the divine right to rule, which traced to Jesus. And so during the 1500s, the Jews were actually kind of rebelling. The Protestants were rebelling against the authority of the Catholic Church. And so within Habsburg, Spain and Portugal, the Sephardic Jews were told you either convert or leave. Many of them left, and they kind of coalesced around Holland. Holland was in the throes of the Reformation, and what they did is they established the first government corporate hybrid. And what that did is it put the power and the wealth of the state behind the corporations that was aligned with the military. And they went throughout the world in a form of conquest. Like they wanted to conquer territories, to take the natural resources, and to establish a global monopoly. And that's the problem that we're dealing with now. We're dealing with a network that wants to establish a global monopoly on wealth, power, and commerce. So after they kind of coalesced around in Holland, which through the Dutch East Indies Company called the VOC, they then invaded England.
So that's the beginning of So that's the beginning of the global financial cabal. Right there is the Dutch East India Company is where it kind of starts.
Yes, it does. That's where this cabal starts.
And those Sephardic Jews align with Protestants against Catholics.
Yes, and I'm a Protestant myself, and I know that there has been a lot of some within our movement say they're satanic or they're opposed to God. I would say that is not true. That Protestantism is essentially the purest form of Christianity, where we have a direct relationship with God outside, an intermediary. But there was an element of Protestant merchants who aligned with a criminal group of Jews. Not all Jews are part of this either, but there was, correct, it's that network that kind of coalesced. That this began the cabal.
Yeah, we're differentiating between Zionists and Jews.
Correct. So, of course, with the colonies in America, we had a very amicable relationship with the monarch. The monarch wanted to establish a new society under God. It was under God's law. But after the East India Company was established as a commercial venture for the British Empire, the Dutch invaded England. They then took over the crown. They took over the parliament, and they established a new kind of constitutional monarchy, which allowed was essentially what this did. It took the power away from the sovereign and it placed it within parliament. Parliament was controlled by these Dutch merchants and bankers under
Hold on. Sorry. So they didn't openly invade. You're talking about Dutch bankers backing. What are you talking about? The Magna Carta?
No, I'm talking about the Dutch Indies Company, East Indies Company.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially, the Protestants within England invited William of Orange from Holland to come and invade England to make sure that a Catholic would not assume the throne. This is a foreign leader invading England, and then these new kind of merchants who seize control of the Parliament then determine, okay, we will allow you, a foreigner, to become the monarch as long as you allow us power of the purse. Now imagine that you can't do this. The sovereign is the monarch. They created the Parliament. The Parliament cannot dictate to the sovereign, how that was done. But England was then that the Parliament then had control of the purse. The monarch, under the control of this new Parliament, created the Bank of England, the first central bank, which was whose shareholders were the Sephardic Jews. And for the first time, England fell into debt, and it was in debt to the Sephardic Jews. They perpetuated that debt, and then they began to kind of spread out throughout the world. In fact, the American Revolution was fought in part by the efforts of the monarch to disadvantage our merchants on behalf of the East India Company, which had then merged with the Dutch East Indies Company, and they were creating this kind of monopoly, like they were kind of self-perpetuating.
That's a very important statement that I think gets overlooked. Because that's one of the major movers of the American Revolution.
Yes, it was. It was about our right to create our own money as opposed to being in debt to the Bank of England. Our right to for free commerce, and they wanted us to kind of allow this foreign entity to have dominance and also to tax us to support them and their wars and their enterprise. So I guess from once this cabal had established control over the British monarchy, they kind of replicated the strategy. So you have then the revolutions, like the revolutions of 1848, the Napoleonic revolutions, where a network then began to target the Christian monarchs who held the divine right to rule. They were Christian, and they also held the power of the purse. Now, this was made possible a few ways. For one, the Rothschilds, who are really one of the main players, the main banking families behind this. The founding Rothschild was an apprentice to the Oppenheimer banking family. The Oppenheimers were the leading court Jews within the Holy Roman Empire, and they in turn had control of the munitions throughout Europe. So they had control of the military. Then you have a Hanover Prince of Germany becoming the King of England. He then organized the Freemasons, which were originally the professional guilds they were Christian. They worked with the monarchs who held the divine right to rule to create God's kingdom on earth. Once I
think you get some argument about Freemasons being Christians.
They were, yes. The Freemasons were originally Christians, and I know today they're associated with all sorts of sinister, things. But they were originally Christian. They maintained professional and moral standards within the professions and the trades. So they were originally Christian, and then in the 1700s, King George of Hanover organized the Freemasons within the city of London, and then they allowed new speculative Masons in, and these were some of these Jewish merchants, Jewish bankers, the Rothschilds. And then through these Masonic networks, they then begin to foment revolution throughout Europe with the idea of overthrowing the monarchs, genociding a lot of people, particularly the intelligentsia, the European aristocrats, the Christians, taking their wealth and then establishing these new republics. And you would think, well, a republic would serve the people. It would be progressive. But what they were established with on behalf of these foreign merchants and foreign bankers to use the wealth and power of the state to fund their interest with the view of establishing a global monopoly on wealth. And then they perpetuated this cycle. So Napoleon, who was bankrolled by the Rothschilds, Napoleon destroyed and dissolved the Venetian Empire, which is one of the most powerful maritime empires in Europe, which had been created over a century. They then took the Venetian fondi, claimed it for themselves meaning this cabal. They unified Italy under a puppet king. The Vatican did not recognize this king, but two reigns, following that, during during World War II, this puppet king, who answered to the City of London, which was controlled by Rothschild and these bankers, then appointed Mussolini, the Benito Mussolini, prime minister. There was no legitimacy to that. Mussolini then created the sovereign of the Vatican, which previously did not even recognize that government as being legitimate. So you have a small cabal creating these different governments, placing their own people into positions of power. Within the Bank of International Settlements, there was a war, like a revolution that was fomented from the City of London. They established a Swiss federation that was established peopled with their own agents, if you will, and then that federation created the Bank of International Settlements, which allowed this bank to it could be exempt from all audits. It would be its bankers could travel without hindrance. They could not be arrested. They could not be questioned. They were essentially a sovereign unto themselves. And of course, the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank to the central banks. So so you can see how they're creating these entities around the world to to consolidate wealth and power within their own hands.
And then they use it in China for opium wars. That's probably where they've really made their plan work exponentially, I guess. Just to jump forward there.
Yes, that's correct. The Opium Wars, opium, of course, was used to weaken the Chinese people. It was a territory that was being conquered by, if you will, by the East India Company. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the City of London, for all intents and purposes, created Wall Street. Wall Street, in turn, financed the Chinese Communist Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution with material support provided by Harvard and Yale universities. They overthrew these governments, seized the assets, and then established their own, dictatorial regimes to kind of, impose their power from within. So all communist revolutions are part of the same dynamic of overthrowing governments and then installing puppet regimes, consolidating power. And then once that power has served its purpose, overthrowing it again, moving onward. They did this throughout Latin America too, where they fomented revolutions and wars to separate the Christian kingdoms from their colonies. They placed both into debt. And then once they were in debt to them, they controlled those nations. They installed their puppet regimes, and then they controlled these new governments. So what you're seeing is not governments that are based upon legitimacy or sovereignty, but it's based upon force. So they will create a power vacuum, move into that power vacuum, and then they become a law throughout the land. So,
didn't I see something in your massive work there about heroin being brought into the United States early on?
Yes, heroin. All of the international drugs, international drug trafficking is all coordinated out of the City of London, traces back to those opium wars, and now you have heroin that is being trafficked into the country, through these networks, and then international drug networks overlap with the international money laundering networks, the child trafficking networks, Jeffrey Epstein. We're talking about the same crime syndicate that is doing this, and they're able to, raise a phenomenal amount of money, billions of dollars through drugs, which destabilize countries, and then also raise money for their black ops. And can help them, then buy up and fund corporate raids. And so if there's competition within a market, they can draw upon the, revenue from the drugs, fund their corporate raids and take over the competition within those markets.
I got a question from a listener saying, didn't the Masons come from the Jesuits who came from the Vatican?
There was a Jesuit network, but I think they're different. The Masons were not part of like the Jesuit order. These were guilds, who were constructing the cathedrals and building the society on a material level. So they were separate from the Jesuits, and I think the Jesuits answered directly to the Vatican, and they were, forgive me, but they were more of a subversive force. Like they were, if you will, like an intelligence network for the Vatican.
I went to St. Xavier High School, so trained by Jesuits.
Are you okay? So did you take? What do you think of the Jesuit oath that they have to take, or did you take the Jesuit oath?
Oh no, I didn't. I don't know what it is, offhand. I'm just, familiar with the Jesuits. I'm not, Catholic these days, and I'm not defending the Jesuits. Just a question there. But let's move forward to, you mentioned Epstein, and let's get to BlackRock, because I've been talking about America as a fallen republic and a failing empire, just like paralleling the Roman fallen republic and failing Roman empire held up by either commerce or conquest. And it looks like Trump is doing conquest. Venezuela was conquest. It was asset forfeiture writ large internationally. And he just did a meeting with all the oil companies that were thrown out of Venezuela. So that seems to fit exactly with what you are talking about. But how does BlackRock being their primary vehicle now, and BlackRock is very tied to Israel as well. Explain to us how BlackRock comes into the picture and fits into the picture now, please.
Will do. Just to backtrack a little bit, the takeover for our country began during the Civil War, when they created this vacuum and then kind of moved this corporate government enterprise into the country. So I think our country was lost, not lost, but it was maybe taken over during the Civil War in violation of our treaty rights and in violation of delegated powers. But that's like the origins of that. BlackRock grew out of.
Let me stop you there. So the English were supporting the South in the Civil War.
They were supplying munitions to both the South and the North. Essentially, what the Civil War was fought over was they wanted to eliminate competition to the Egyptian cotton plantations, and we were at a disadvantage by having slave labor, or we meaning the South. And so a plan was hatched within the City of London, carried out through the Freemasons, to create this kind of mercenary war on U.S. soil. And yes, the English did support the South because the cotton plantations were tied into their global textile trade. So they were more aligned with this slave trade. But at that juncture, it was intended to eliminate the competition to their Egyptian plantations. And then through that war, there was a vacuum. There was no, a war that was actually called. They were able to kind of insinuate themselves into that power vacuum to create like kind of an illegitimate system. And this would have been, this traces back to the Treaty of Paris, where after the American Revolution, we granted the British Navy certain delegated powers, but which they could and could not do. During that power vacuum, they kind of insinuated themselves in and then acted as though they were the Republic when they were actually this kind of corporate government hybrid entity.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just a very different, perspective. But all wars are banker wars. Wars are racket. Smedley Butler, World War I Marine.
It's all racket.
Yeah.
And just to get a sense of the illegitimacy, remember that the Federal Reserve was created in 1913 during a recess. You have one congressman and one senator and one President Wilson signing off on it. So in the absence of a quorum, that legislation which created the Federal Reserve never should have passed. But the fact that it did reflects that we weren't dealing with a republic. We weren't operating within the Constitution.
Yes, very true. And so once the Federal Reserve is in there, that's the bankster global system in America. But bring us up to date now on BlackRock, because BlackRock is the centerpiece today.
Correct. Yes, it is. So the fiat currency was launched during the Nixon administration, and it was actually they had planned for the Kennedy administration, but there wasn't sufficient support within Congress to pass it. Measures for a fiat currency. So the English rigged the gold markets. They created a demand for the fiat currency, and the effort was pushed through by Peterson. And you may know him. He was the Commerce Secretary, but he founded Blackstone. Blackstone in turn created BlackRock, and with the fiat currency, they were then able to print unlimited amounts of money to subsidize their commerce. And of course, the debt was held by the American people. Larry Fink, who founded BlackRock, he refined securitized debt. So essentially, they could print unlimited amounts of money. They could then remarket that, resell that into these financial instruments to like foreign investors, who then began to hold the debt, allowing them to print more money which the American people would have to pay. So they refined a system whereby they would market debts. You'd have your mortgages, your university debt, your car payments, rental history, any type of debt where they could generate a recurring income. They would then process, bundle it, and then sell it around the world. And now you have these foreign entities demanding a higher and higher return on investment. So you have municipalities that are continuing. BlackRock has a hand in this to demand more money from homeowners. Well, how do you generate more revenue to then give to their own enterprise? You overvalue the properties. That then generates higher taxes. You have appraisal fraud coordinated through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, in concert with BlackRock in the City of London. And you have entities like Zillow, which is a spinoff from Microsoft, creating these markets whereby a group like Blackstone or its affiliates could buy real estate within an area. They could have one house within the area reappraised to be maybe double its value, and then all of the other properties within that portfolio would automatically increase, thereby increasing the value on paper. And then with that amount, you could then begin to use that as credit to extend more loans, which ultimately the people would have to bear, because whenever they end up defaulting or they're unable to cover the loans, they will go to the federal government for a rescue. And what they're doing now is that they're stating that they have bankrupted the governments. They have acquired a monopoly on wealth through these different, debt securitization schemes, that now they're having these governments around the world sell off all of their assets. And then you've got these entities that have illegitimately accumulated all of the wealth.
That's California, that's Maui, and where was the other big fire?
I think it was South Carolina.
So that's what's happening in all those areas.
Yeah, that's true. Also in England too. They originally, a lot of these, they actually put the British government into debt, and then in order to cover the debt, England began to privatize its infrastructure. And once these entities acquire the infrastructure, they then rent it back out to you. So you'll have to pay usage fees. And we're seeing this kind of usage fee or subscription service attached to every, kind of every product and service you can imagine. If you want to buy a car, you have to pay a subscription to heat the seats, to use the radio, to any number of different services. Like they're trying to use the federal government as a weapon to shore up a monopoly on wealth, and then they are using the people as a source of the wealth, as credit, and then using them as customers in turn, where they're having the people continue to pay to pay into their system, in which they really control everything. They have a monopoly on the real estate and so on, healthcare, and all the different areas where the government was able to shore up for them, or which has a hand through the fiat dollar.
Yes. So some comments. Freemasonry was a pyramid structure, low level, do service. Yeah, I agree with that. Spathox. Nixon took us off the gold standard, stand for honor in 72. Yeah, I think that's what Susan is referring to there. Unique approach. Can I get your thoughts on BlackRock's recent connections with Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, and related?
Sure. One issue that a lot of people aren't aware of is that by the end of the Clinton administration, the petrodollar was on borrowed time because the oil companies had overprocessed the oil wells. And so Saudi Arabia needed to diversify its economy. And that's why they began to move into AI and this Agenda 2030 business. Saudi Arabia has acquired a massive sovereign wealth fund from the petrodollar and from the fiat dollar and so forth. They are turning around and then using that sovereign wealth fund to then buy into like Tesla and Twitter. But Saudi Arabia is really another face of this same crime syndicate. And so BlackRock, of course, has interests all around the world, and China and England and so forth, and Saudi Arabia. And it's a kind of a vehicle for that kleptocracy.
Is it true that Trump says he wants to block corporations from purchasing residential homes?
That he wants to block these institutional investors.
Yes, because that's what's happening where all these fires are. That's.
I think he's putting a cap on. I did read that he wants to allow the public to a chance at home ownership, but the problem is right now that that most of the jobs have been exported overseas. Nobody has, or fewer people have the resources to buy the house. Given that our assets have been taken from us, but I think he is moving in that direction.
So you're giving him credit in that area.
I am giving him credit for that.
Okay. No countries are buying U.S. debt right now. They know our debt is bad. Yep, that's very true. That's why we're going to conquest. That's what I've been talking about.
Correct. That's
switching from commerce to conquest. Is Saudi Arabia part of BRICS?
That's a good question. Now, BRIC was created by the City of London. They knew that the petrodollar was on borrowed time. Therefore, America's hegemony was on the descent, on the decline, and so they created BRICS, which it is now, as an alternative to that. I think Saudi Arabia has a foot in both the Chinese enterprise and also in America's. So I don't think they're fully on board with it. And BRICS anyway is it's so it's not really a tight network. Each country is more or less operating on its own. So you're not going to find that same level of I guess of power or of a market that you do with the United States. So they're not really a threat to that market yet.
Baylor customers say silver is soaring. Opinion. I don't know what you're really asking. I don't think that's really a clear question, Baylor Customs. So rewrite that. Breaking records almost every day. Yeah, that's true, but I'm not sure what you're asking here. But let's go back to well, the other one I was thinking of is Gaza. So where Kushner wants to remake it into some kind of Qatar kind of place. So that's the same pattern that we've seen in California, that we've seen in Maui. And so, but again, how does BlackRock tie into what Trump is backing, the Gaza genocide? I know it's tied into, I know from personal anecdotal experience, it's tied into Israel in particular, but go back and as you've taken us through history, the hidden history, how it has become centerpiece and how it is, and it's prime moving and motivation now today.
Okay, within the Gaza situation, Israel unfortunately has become the international headquarters of this international crime syndicate. It was set up decades ago to be like an international money laundering haven, and one of the plans from decades ago was that they were going to bomb Gaza and then they were going to rebuild it with these casinos and these different infrastructures as part of their global conquest. So I think what Kushner is doing there is very much of a part of a global scheme. I don't know what BlackRock's role specifically is in Gaza.
And what is Trump's family's role in all of this? I think you indict him and his family in this, if I'm reading your stuff correctly.
I do, and I really hate to say this because I was a Trump supporter originally.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, it pains me. Trump has always been a member of the crime syndicate. And I know this as he was very deeply involved with the tribal casinos, particularly the Seminole tribe of Florida. This was a casino that was established by Meyer Lansky, was seeded by Meyer Lansky, the founder of the National Crime Syndicate.
Meyer Lansky was Trump's mentor, and a very correct and a very. Do I have that right, or am I wrong?
I think you're thinking of Roy Cohn.
Oh, Roy Cohn. Sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. But yeah, they're part of the same group. Yeah. And he had also, he has a lot of ties, or he was involved with the Resorts International in Atlantic City, which has deep ties to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and to these international crime syndicates. So the Seminole tribe in particular, this tribe reached out to all of the other tribes around the nation to establish their own casinos. These casinos were churning money out for the global elite. The Seminole tribe works with, they acquired the Hard Rock franchise. Hard Rock raises money for the Crown and for the Rothschilds directly.
Really, the Seminole tribe has the Hard Rock franchise? I didn't know that.
They did. They purchased it for $1 billion.
Wow. Huh.
And another thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that the federally recognized tribes were established by Rockefeller, and they were used to project social democracy into the United States to establish contained taxpayer-supported markets and to take the natural resources from the country. So you got Trump is in the middle of that. And
wait a minute. Say that again. Go back up and say that again slower.
Okay. With the tribes, you mean, or
the tribal governmental system was established for what?
Okay, so the Rockefellers established the federally recognized Indian tribes for the purposes of projecting social democracy into the United States. So they were established as sovereign nations. taxpayer supported. They used the taxpayers to seed the money for the casinos to become, economically self-sufficient. But a large portion of the casino wealth is redirected into the major investment banks and into the corporations. And so the corporations and the Rockefellers, these different, energy companies who controlled the tribes, use them as vehicles to extract natural resources, to generate revenue, for their monopolies, and to acquire, like land and water rights. These federally recognized Indian tribes get billions of dollars a year. The Carlyle Group, which was the beginning of this crony capitalism, was created through the Alaskan Native corporations, through, exploiting tax loopholes. And you'll find that within these Indian tribes, there are deep ties to the Crown, the Rothschilds, international money laundering, child trafficking, drug running, and so forth. But they are the terrain of this crime syndicate.
That's really because I have Native heritage and actually live on Indian land. I've always railed against the government blood system because it's based on the British nobility system. It has nothing to do with the Indian cultural system is adoptive. It doesn't matter what your blood quotient is. The blood quotient thing is English nobility. And of course, eventually, as everybody intermarries, the blood quotient gets less. So you get to take over the land as well. But so many traditional tribes now are so into that.
And that was something.
That's actually legitimacy, where it was traditionally never legitimacy. Kind of a sidelight there, but I just find your perspective on that fascinating.
Thank you, and that's a very important point that you've made. A lot of Indian tribes are confronting this very issue, that the genuine Indians, like those who have the blood quantum, are being pushed out or marginalized within their own reservations. And the federal government has redefined a Native American to mean a member of an Indian tribe. So anybody, regardless of blood quantum, can become a tribal member. And so eventually you have these individuals with no, cultural connection or genealogical connection to those tribes, running the governments and receiving the benefits.
Yes. So again, let's go back to BlackRock, because I was also fascinated because I think you were talking about, you quoted somebody going up to the Arctic Circle and finding the black magnetic rock or something.
Yes, that was it's called the Rupert Nigris, and that was like an access into inner Earth in the Arctics, and this was reputedly one of the openings that went into inner Earth where allegedly they found a lot of ancient technology that has been then being used today or weaponized against us. But the royal families had access and knowledge about this inner Earth. But once the Dutch East Indies Company and the East India Company began to take over governments, they suppressed knowledge of this inner Earth, and then used that knowledge for themselves and their own purposes.
Wow. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Pellucidar.
What was that?
Edgar Rice Burroughs, who wrote Tarzan, Pellucidar. He wrote about he wrote about all of that up there. How did Trump abuse tribal land resource? Was it because he filed bankruptcy at his casino? And this is a very illuminating show. Thanks for having Susan on. Yeah, so if you got questions, put them in the chat, and I will relay them to Susan, because she has a vast knowledge on this. So yeah, we want to pick her brain while we got her here. But did was it because he filed bankruptcy at his casino? I guess that's their question there.
Okay, so how did he harm the tribes? Is that the question?
How did Trump abuse tribal lands resources? Was it because he filed bankruptcy at his casino?
Okay, so the part of this that I'm aware of was his connection to Jack Abramoff. And I think that he was working with the Indian tribes to kind of establish casinos, and then in turn, that those casinos could then generate wealth for third-party enterprises. I don't have any knowledge specifically that Trump abused the Indians necessarily. I think he was a champion of the Indian tribes, but he was a part of that culture. And my opinion, based upon what I saw during the Abramoff investigation, was that Jack Abramoff, who was the lobbyist at the center of the Abramoff investigation during the Bush administration, ended up serving prison time to kind of cover up for some of the corruption that was associated with the Seminole tribe. And I know that Trump was bankrolling that tribe's casino.
Okay. So and I think you get to the point where you're talking about the biggest scam is bringing about a digital currency. I say any kind of currency that goes down if your electric goes down is illegitimate. And you're saying AI is tied into that, and Trump has been behind a lot of global digital currency. And again, is that because we are so in debt that the system is so broken that we got to move from that?
Yes. Trump is trying to create he's created a stable coin, and what he's trying to do, and I think this also ties into his feud with the current head of the Federal Reserve, is that he wants to replace the Federal Reserve and make himself and his network the central banker of the United States. So the stable coin would be tied to the dollar, which of course is backed by the fiat currency, and would enable him to be a central banker. And I think that part of the dispute in Venezuela could be that he wants to bring the stable coins into Venezuela. Currently, there's like an embargo that would prevent him from doing that. But if the American government can become the government of Venezuela, he can then bring the stable coins there and begin to kind of use our money, the stable coin, to buy our debt and so forth. And if he succeeds with this, he could potentially become a trillionaire. They're looking at, they meaning the elites and BlackRock, are looking at tokenizing the hundreds of trillions of dollars of assets around the world, corporations, art, real estate, you name it, where they are going to have a stake in that and then monetize, sell it, and then extract the credit.
But the stable coin would still be a digital coin.
It would be a digital coin. And my perspective is that within the Constitution, only that the Congress can create money. Instead of kind of moving on from the system that they've broken, I'd like to see the money go, that power to go back to the federal government, because I think once they move the currency away from the Federal Reserve and then to these stable coins and other digital coins, you're going to have no accountability for this currency, and it's going to move away from the government into like a global framework, which would allow this crime syndicate full reign over our financial resources.
I guess that ties into a question from Fish Guy. If we agree that BlackRock and the 13 families enslave us with debt, do you have any solutions on how we break free from this enslavement? Well, again, my answers are to live in small communities, where you do a lot of trading and cash. What say you?
I would agree with that too. I have tried to kind of expose the illegitimacy behind the system, and I think that if we can maybe have the public reach critical awareness of the problem and how we've lost the republic, we can then mobilize Congress to kind of reverse course. I look to the Magnitsky Act, which was supported by Bill Browder. He was able to bring the criminal Russian oligarchs to heel by having both our government and governments around the world pass against their wishes, but against what they would want to do, the Magnitsky Act, which allowed them to restrain the international money laundering of criminal Russian oligarch human rights abusers. So I'd like to see a similar type of process take place in which we the people can bring forth the illegitimacy of our current government to the federal government, and then to renegotiate terms and restore that legitimacy.
But the problem with that is Congress is in the pocket of Israel, almost all of them. And you just said Israel is the center of the global crown syndicate. But yeah, Trump is feuding with the Federal Reserve. But I don't see that as real practical. I did hear something about who was it? I forget her name. She was talking about there's a lot of gold in the Philippines, and they were going to try and use that to pay the debt. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
There have been like mixed stories about whether there was or was not gold. I know that Trump wants to pay down the debt because he wants to establish a national sovereign fund. But I know what you're talking about. That there were reports that during World War II the Japanese had hidden gold in the Philippines.
Okay, so go ahead.
Please. Oh yes, yes. So what I was trying to say is that if these governments have been created through a power vacuum, then they are operating like our government is operating beyond delegated powers and illegitimately. And so I'd like to restore legitimacy to our government, to our constitutional republic. And I think once that happens, Israel will not have control of us because they're operating through this corporate government hybrid, like on behalf of the City of London. And according to one of the treaties negotiated after the American Revolution, the Treaty of Paris, Great Britain cannot govern the United States, but they're doing that right now. And so I think we need to kind of look at the problem of legitimacy, and then we can restore power to the people.
Well, Wilson established the Federal Reserve. Can it be kicked out? Because it does have to go, right? If this is ever going to be fixed.
I didn't understand the question, or I didn't hear the question.
Woodrow Wilson allowed the Federal Reserve into our country. Can they be kicked out of the government? Because that's the banking families that are not part of the federal government. They just are a private bank.
That's correct. So if you have a corporate government hybrid operating beyond delegated powers, it did not have the constitutional authority to create the Federal Reserve. It was an unconstitutional entity anyway. So I think if you enforce the Constitution, you enforce the treaty rights and delegated powers, I do think they have to go. So
right now, where I've talked about Venezuela is preparation for Iran, and Gaza being taken over by Kushner for this international criminal syndicate run out of Israel. What do you see happening? Because what I've seen is Trump switched. Well, he switched with his second term to supporting to being run by Israel, but he's also switched from commerce, from the tariff wars, which were I thought trying to stop China's unrestricted warfare doctrine of 20 years, to now open naked conquest for resources that conceivably could, even through international asset forfeiture, even really pay down the debt. I mean, if he pursued that policy with Colombia and Mexico through force, you could possibly pay down the debt.
Yeah, you could, and there's also trillions of dollars of untapped oil and natural resources in California that could be used to pay down the debt as well. But I think China might have some interest in California. But you're right. He can go to Venezuela and these foreign countries to acquire the natural resources, and in turn, that could be used to pay down the debt. I think that's what he's trying to do. Well,
that goes along with him pulling federal funding from sanctuary cities, particularly Los Angeles, laying siege to them because they can't survive without the federal funding. Stand for honor. It's not Ann Vandersteel I'm thinking of, who was talking about the gold to me. It was, I can't think of her name right now, but what else about BlackRock as the centerpiece player in Israel? Because it all seems to center around Israel and America right now. America backing the aggression in Ukraine, backing the aggression in Israel, and now open conquest in Venezuela and almost waiting on open conquest in Iran. So that's for the Iranian oil fields as well. I assume you agree with that.
There was a document that I found when I was working on the BlackRock book. I hope I framed this correctly, but Israel has kind of established, or is in the process of establishing, a sovereign wealth fund based upon oil reserves or royalties from oil reserves that it has acquired. And from what I was able to see within the paperwork, I believe that BlackRock wanted its sovereign wealth fund to be in a position of acquiring, or it was positioning itself to acquire BlackRock. But that was in the works a few years ago, or about a year or so ago, and I haven't seen any movement on that. But I'm wondering if that isn't maybe the end game, where they will kind of amass the resources, use BlackRock as a vehicle, for wealth accumulation, and then acquire BlackRock for Israel, like under a sovereign fund type of arrangement.
And Trump would, of course, be in on that because he is in lockstep with Israel. And that would also then lead to the Greater Israel. That would enhance the Greater Israel project.
That's correct. I think they're also trying to elevate communist China. Like a lot of these syndicate members are relocating there, with the hopes that China will then dominate the world through commerce.
I think it's Earl Jackson asked, why don't we just, who is that? Earl Jackson, why don't we just default on the debt? Actually, there is talk about that the debt owed to the Chinese is illegitimate somehow. And Mike Adams has talked about how the Chinese have been buying our debt. Can you clarify any of that? I'm kind of cloudy on that.
I think the Japanese and Chinese do own the debt, that they're less inclined to purchase it. I think, the way the system is now is that the Federal Reserve will print money. You've got BlackRock, facilitating, the purchase and the sale of mortgage-backed securities, treasury bills, and debt. But I think these foreign countries are less likely to buy it, and if they don't buy the debt, then you can't continue to print money. But ultimately, the American people are the ultimate creditors, and you're looking at if they've accumulated this debt. This is debt that they, as a corporate entity, hold within a contract. In order for somebody to actually be bound to pay for those goods and services, they must have received some value in return. And what they're doing is they're taking our money and they're sending it overseas or sending it to themselves to build enterprises, to build up foreign countries, to build up infrastructure in which BlackRock and these other entities will have a stake or will be able to sell through subscription services or otherwise, monetize. And we, the American people, are funding that debt. And so I think a case could be made that we don't owe that this debt is owned by this entity that they have created and are using. They're attempting
that's just like you're taking American state nationals' legal argument of illegal contracts that we were not aware of, and you're just writing it large.
There's also an organization called, I think it's the Committee to Abolish International Debt or National Debt, and they've spoken to how the World Bank and these different international organizations have unlawfully placed third world countries into their debt for the purposes of then extracting their natural resources in their land. And I think this is going on throughout the world, and it's contractually invalid, but I think the American nationals have made a similar argument about whether or not we indeed do owe that debt.
But what you're saying Trump is trying to do is establish this stable coin, international digital currency.
Correct.
Between America and Israel, with him at the center of it, and that would then, I guess, make the Fed irrelevant. Is that?
Yes, it would make the Fed irrelevant, and I think his plan is to shut down the Fed and then to move the Federal Reserve into like a digital or currency, digital type of bank with himself and his family members and his close network controlling that central bank.
Wow, that is quite a statement. Say that again slowly, please.
Okay, he's looking towards doing away with the Federal Reserve, and then he and his family, I think it's called World Financial Liberty, or World, which would issue the stable coins, and he is having himself and his family members placed in charge of running the stable coin and essentially operating in the function of a central banker. So they would be phasing out the Federal Reserve and kind of putting themselves into that position in its place.
And you think that's his ultimate plan?
He has supported legislation to that effect. You can look up, for example, the Genius Act, which is one of them, and look up.
What's that?
That was one of the founding pieces of legislation that is supporting the infrastructure behind the stable coin.
Sounds like Trump is not America first, it's Trump family first.
I think that has always been the case. I think Trump knows the system very well.
Yeah, certainly. He's always been in the system.
He's always been in the system, and he's using it for his own benefit.
A side note here, stand for honor. Do not confuse sovereign citizen versus American state nationals. They're not the same thing. Law enforcement confuses them all the time, but that's not.
I'm not a sovereign citizen, by the way, but yes. If that's true.
No, but I'm an advocate for American state nationals, but not sovereign citizens.
Correct.
Yes. So you're confusing that stand for honor. And that's what law enforcement likes to do a lot. Oh, wow. Stand for honor. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, this has been fascinating. Before we wrap up, what else should we know?
Wow, there's so much to know. But I think what I'd like the American people to know is that the power ultimately resides with you, the American people. And I'd like to see you all educate yourselves about how we lost the control of our constitutional republic. And I think with proper education on the treaties and the legal foundation, the contractual foundation of our government, which was established through several constitutions, several treaties, that we will be able to restore the Constitution. I think it will not be easy, but once we understand the problem, we can then we'll have the clarity to forge solutions. Because from what I'm seeing, these governments around the world are not operating within the Constitution or with any proper legal basis, and I think that could be within this framework. I think we can have a solution on restoring the republic. So I'd like to see us move in that direction.
What is the Symington Amendment?
What is it?
Symington Amendment.
The Symington. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of it either. So it's SarahBradfordBooks.com and the latest.
Susan Bradford.
Say again?
Susan Bradford.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm old and I've been concussed a lot. SusanBradfordBooks.com. And the latest one is the BlackRock Bamboozle.
That's it.
Is that correct?
It is correct.
Miss Bradford is a wellspring of knowledge. Thank you both. Exceptional conversation. I would agree. I'm going to have you back to talk more because you are a very intelligent lady with a vast understanding of this subject matter. Oh, Earl Jackson, Letnick is tied in with Tether, which is tied in with stablecoin. Do you know what that means? I don't know what that means.
Yes, that's part of the stablecoin infrastructure, but what he said is correct.
Yeah, I have a very smart audience. Sometimes they're smarter than me. Obviously, Earl Jackson is. Yes.
It definitely kept me on my toes. I really very much enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed the questions.
Oh, good. Here's another one. How do you see the upcoming Clarity Act playing into this with the SEC?
With the Securities Exchange Commission?
How do you see the upcoming Clarity Act playing into this with SEC? I don't know. Like I said, my audience is talking about stuff I don't know, but they're putting SarahBradfordBooks.com in the in Rumble rant, and I've got it up on my Patreon on my locals as well. So you should get some response here.
Oh, thank you. Again, it's Susan Bradford Books, but
Susan Bradford. I'm sorry, it does say Susan Bradford. I'm just saying the wrong thing.
No, that's okay. I know it's been a long week, but I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know that you're a wealth of knowledge yourself. So it's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you so much. Honored to have you, awed by your knowledge and wisdom, and we will have to have you back and keep up the good work, and God bless.
God bless you as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, that was a fascinating, thanks, Susan. Yeah, fascinating hand clap there for Stand for Honor. Yeah, please like, share, and subscribe this. I think it's very important. I think it really fits into what's going on right now. And Susan really understands it in a way beyond, what I understand. So remember, we don't always win, but we always learn more in defeat. And winning is difficult, demanding, and always expensive in blood and treasure. We can and will win, and Susan thinks we can win if we commit. The most committed wins. So define what you're willing to fight, kill, and die for. We are behind enemy lines, in our own country, against our own government. The faithful versus the fakes. Reset versus resistance. Parents versus pedos. God is not with us, but we are with God as best as we can be. Tyrants always fall. Tyranny always fails. Graphene is not in our DNA, but freedom is. But freedom is never, ever given. It is earned. It is fought for. It is won. It is taken. So take it.